We have a Top Button podcast and Cover Crimson podcast crossover edition, Iron Bowl week. Got my man Clint Lamb in here today. Fired up to have you here, man. Ready to talk some football. And I say we just jump in. And we got 3 questions for each other. We're gonna ask from an Auburn perspective and from an Alabama perspective. We're gonna ask some questions and then have some fun. So Clint, I think the big one of the big talking points I've been seeing or hearing is that, Auburn's kind of got this nothing to lose mentality, and there's a lot of pressure on Alabama, a lot to lose. Talk about that from an Alabama perspective. Do you get a sense that they're feeling a bit of pressure on this game from the coaching staff side, from the player side, from the fan side? How do you feel about that particular talking point?
It's the most pressure that I have seen in a while. Because you don't go to the 12-team playoff last year. Everybody thought, Alabama fan was, as soon as they went from a 4-team to a 12-team, Alabama's going to be in it every year. And then you have a coaching change. The greatest college football coach of all time, he ends up retiring. You bring in Kalen DeBoer, who had been to the playoffs, had taken Washington to a national championship, had been won everywhere he's been. And then, you miss the playoffs because you lose to 2 6-6 football teams or 500 football teams. And then, of course, you do the same pretty much close enough, I guess, in the bowl game. And that's just falling short of expectations. Like under Nick Saban, you never saw the ranked losses, or the unranked losses, or at least they were very rare. And so, seeing that and the way that it played out going into year 2, a lot of optimism. I personally thought, hey, this team is absolutely good enough to win the college football playoffs, win a national championship. And then, of course, they lose week 1 against Florida State. At the time, we didn't know it was going to be a 5-6 or potentially 6-6 football team, but it definitely felt like it was more of the same from 2024. So that created a lot of frustration. And then you rip off a really nice 8-game win streak, including 4 top 20 opponents consecutively, do something that no one else has ever done in the SEC before. And now the excitement's back up, but then the offense starts to struggle a little bit. You're not seeing the same level of success from Ty Simpson and company as you'd seen earlier. And so there's some frustration there from fans, but you're also still figuring out ways to win games. Then, of course, you drop one it's not that they shouldn't have against Oklahoma, but you lose the turnover battle 3-0. You had opportunities, you lose it by 2. Now you're finding yourself potentially in a situation where you could end up missing the college football playoff. And if you lose to Auburn, you're 100% missing it. So with the way that, it going to a 12-team, if you go back-to-back years and you don't make it when you've had opportunities in both years, fans are certainly going to be upset about it. And so, I definitely think there's some pressure. But I also think that so far this year, one difference between this team and last year's team is I feel like this team has really handled adversity well and have responded well. Last year, they really didn't. So I'm optimistic, but at the same time, to say that there's pressure, I think that's fair.
This is kind of a follow-up question, and I'll let you do yours just because I think it's fascinating. As an Alabama fan, as a guy that covers Alabama, would you have rather faced Auburn with Hugh Freeze or the interim situation right now? If you could pick, which one would you take?
Hugh Freeze, 10,001. And
that's actually wild.
That's a great question. I feel like right now, DJ Durkin, really Derek Nix, I guess, has really unlocked the offense. I mean, it looks vastly different to me. I think featuring your playmakers, Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton, I think 9.5 targets is what they're averaging, both of them each apiece over the last 2 games. That's what everybody expected to see going into the season. And so I think that Hugh Freeze, in a lot of ways, he failed those 2 guys in particular, but really the entire offense and really the entire team. So Durkin, I do think from a defensive perspective, and granted, this is not one of the questions that I was planning to ask, but I at least wanted to get your take on it. Do you think him moving from being the defensive coordinator exclusively to being interim head coach and having to add more responsibilities, you've also seen the defense maybe not play as well as of late? Do you think that there's a correlation there at all?
Gotta be. To me, I thought the only thing that could happen, the offense couldn't get any worse. The only thing that could happen with this team is the defense takes a little bit of a hit because of those added responsibilities. And DJ was actually asked about that on Monday, and he said he feels like it's slowing down. It feels like, the rush. You've had a bye week. You've had an FCS school to prepare for. The turmoil of the change and delegation and trying to figure out how to handle it from a day-to-day process, all that has felt like it's slowed down. And you saw Auburn struggle really in the first quarter, I guess, against Mercer, which is actually a pretty explosive offense at that level. And then all of a sudden they flipped the switch and they completely got back to playing Auburn football, turning them over, creating 3-and-outs, big stops, things like that. So I think that's probably natural. Like as the longer you get to do it, the more you get to figure it out. And I got a feeling this is going to be a lot more like an Auburn defense that you've seen the previous 2 years than maybe against Vanderbilt. I could be way wrong, but I felt like as time's gone by, you understand who does what and how you do it, and you can go execute on Saturday.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And speaking of Durkin, I'll go ahead and ask this. With him, first of all, is he still in play to be Auburn's head coach? And if so, does that add any pressure to Auburn going into this game? Or do you buy into the idea that Auburn really doesn't have a whole lot to lose? Obviously, they can get bowl eligible, but that's kind of been one of the big narratives is Alabama feels like they have everything to lose in a lot of ways. And Auburn, I guess what are your thoughts on Durkin and potentially not only being Auburn's head coach, but if that adds any pressure to this game from his side of things?
So let's start with the pressure thing. I think from a fan perspective, you're kind of feeling like you got nothing to lose. But I think the coaching staff feels a lot of pressure because I think even if you don't necessarily get the head coaching gig, there's guys I think that would love to stay here at Auburn. And then also there's pressure in the aspect of, look, if you win, you're bowl eligible and you get bowl practices, which I know people are going to roll their eyes at that. But when you're trying to retain a roster, the worst thing you can do is have them leave campus. Okay, so if you make a bowl game, you're probably looking at like a Gasparilla Bowl or something right there around Christmas time. Class is in December 5th. That means essentially when class is in, football practice would kick right back into a bowl, kick right back in as you get prepared for the bowl game. So I think there's a lot of pressure because I think there's not a lot of pressure, not nearly as much as Alabama, but there's pressure there because that's very important. I think the biggest key to this whole search is not only can you find the right guy, but how can you retain the talent that you've accumulated over the last 3 years. So as far as Durkin goes, I think Durkin's okay with being defensive coordinator. I think it's like I want to be in Auburn. I want to be a part of this. A coordinator is a pretty sweet gig right now. You don't have to deal with all the mess that the head coach has to deal with. It's paying incredibly well. I mean, he's one of the highest paid coordinators in the game. Family loves it here. So I think, honestly, DJ's kind of playing with house money. I think he feels like he's probably going to be retained. If he gets the head coaching gig, great. If not, he's happy with the roster that he's been able to build and on the defensive side of the ball. And I think they'll be, just fine there. So definitely some pressure, but I think kind of pales in comparison to what, what Alabama may be dealing with on their side with all the ramifications that could come from a loss. And that's something that I want to ask you about right now. There's been a lot of talk, and there's always a lot of talk around this time of year from as far as like coaching. Will this coach leave if this happens, or could this coach go there? This job opened up. Will they come get my coach? There's been very little talk about Kalen DeBoer outside of one position, and that's Penn State. That name has become popular as a possible, like they may be targeting him. Do you feel like the outcome of this game could decide that future or that storyline? Or do you think he's safe no matter what? Do you think he could go even with a win? I don't know what's all going on there. I just love to get your thoughts on that whole situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair question because this is, the coaching season. Yeah, it's silly. Great way to put it. And right now, I mean, everybody's being asked. I mean, and Alabama assistants, Jamarcus Shepard, Oregon State, potentially. They're talking about him there. You talk about Mo Linguist and potentially North Texas, or Kane Womack in Arkansas. And then obviously you got Kalen DeBoer and potentially Penn State. I mean, across the board. And Ryan Grubb also with UCLA. I know he's been mentioned there as well. I think that's a nod to the coaching staff that Alabama has built. And I know that they're not focusing on any of that stuff going into this game. But if they lose this game, obviously the pressure ramps up. I've never believed if you want to take the island, burn the boats, don't leave yourself any sort of out and you'll figure out a way to get it done. If they're thinking in those terms, or Kalen DeBoer specifically, I don't think that bodes well for Saturday. I don't think that that's his approach, though. He likes being at Alabama. He wanted the challenge of coming to Tuscaloosa and replacing Nick Saban. It would be very strange for him to want that challenge. And then as you finally start to, because even if they lose to Auburn and they miss the playoffs, that will be extremely disappointing. This team was a lot more capable, in my opinion, than last year's team. So, there's going to be some conversations. There's going to be some upset fans. There's no doubt about it. So from that side of it, there might be some people who want him gone. But I also feel like that he's still not where he needs to be as far as the personnel on the roster and it fitting exactly what they want to do. Like the offensive line, kind of a hodgepodge of bigger, more powerful offensive linemen. Then you got Parker Brailsford, who's more of that athlete. You get him in space, get him locked on targets. And so it's what they've been able to run versus what they want to run. I still think there's some shortcomings there where there are limitations, I guess. And so would, Kalen DeBoer consider bailing? I mean, you never know. I mean, if he's not happy with his circumstances in Tuscaloosa, I wouldn't think that would have anything to do with the roster or really even the pressure. If he just didn't feel like he was a cultural fit or just, and it's not just him, you've got families involved too. Maybe
Sure.
that would be something that would play into it. But I've heard nothing as far as, that being a possibility for Kalen DeBoer or him wanting to leave. So it's a great question. It's one that a lot of people have had, but I think Kalen DeBoer is going to be Alabama's head coach in 2026. I'll tell you that. So on Saturday, we've got the Iron Bowl and an entire slate of college football games coming your way. And our friends over at Underdog have got you covered. Here's how Underdog works. Just pick higher or lower on 2 or more player stats, and you're in the game with a shot to win up to 5,000 times your money. Personally, I like Ty Simpson's 5.5 rushing yards projection. With Alabama's struggles in the traditional run game, Simpson's legs could be a compensating factor to help the Tide move the ball against Auburn's defense. And if you sit down and actually look at his rushing numbers, Simpson has actually posted 7 yards or more in 5 of Alabama's last 6 games. Another projection I'm in on, assuming good health, is Daniel Hill going higher than his half a touchdown projection. Over Alabama's last 6 games, Hill has scored 6 touchdowns with at least 1 score in 5 of those 6 games. Yes, Auburn has one of the SEC's top-ranked run defenses, but as of late, Hill is the guy that they've turned to in almost all of those goal line situations. So I've already locked in my interest for the weekend. Now it's your turn. And if you're new to Underdog, you can use the code COVER and get $100 in bonus entries when you play your first $5 entry, win or lose. Once again, that code is COVER, and it gets you $100 in bonus entries when you play your first entry, win or lose.
Real quick, this is impromptu, and when you're listening to this will not be breaking news, but you mentioned Kane Womack in Arkansas. It looks like Arkansas just hired a coach. They just hired Alex Golish from South Florida. So probably as an Alabama fan, maybe breathe a little sigh of relief because Kane's done a fantastic job. I think he'll probably still be up for some other jobs.
He will, but he played at Arkansas. He really, I think, wanted that job. I mean, I'm not going to speak for him, but I can understand him wanting that job. That would be one. It's the SEC. It's not South Alabama. It's the big boys, and it's a place that you're familiar with. He would know exactly what to expect in Fayetteville, and so I think that would have been a fit. I love the hire that they made, but from an Alabama fan's perspective, this is great news, and it's great news that it's breaking before the game.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I think not only are you worried about your head coach, it's like, okay, maybe if you retain your head coach, are you losing your defensive coordinator? Or are you losing your offensive coordinator or maybe key position coaches like Mo Linguist, phenomenal recruiter, Jamarcus Shepard, phenomenal recruiter. So like there's this, there's these different elements or aspects of it that you got to be kind of focusing in on. But Kane Womack, I mean, he's done a phenomenal job with Alabama's defense this year. I think from being able to force turnovers and being able to, improve the pass rush compared to a season ago, started off pretty slow, but they've really come on strong with Yanze Pierre and a bunch of those guys. They still, at times, they're giving up the chunk runs, and I think that's kind of been an Achilles heel for this defense. But their ability to kind of bow up in the red zone and play great red zone defense, I think that's been a huge factor. And I think that when you talk to fans, the more reliable side of the football, which is mind-blowing when you think about Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, but it has been the defensive side. So that's the last thing they wanted was distraction or, to even lose their defensive coordinator. So that's great news. But speaking of which, one of the questions that I had is, I do think that Alabama is going to be preparing for both quarterbacks. And I think K Womack even mentioned all three quarterbacks. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, but you're probably not going to see Jackson Arnold, in my opinion. But I did want to get your take on the Ashton Daniels, Deuce Knight element of this. Like, you're probably going to see Ashton Daniels, I'm sure, but what about Deuce Knight? Do you think it's possible they maybe have some packages, or do you think that'll be, if you're seeing Deuce Knight, that probably doesn't bode well for Ashton Daniels?
So this is probably one of the I've never seen a scenario like this as far as quarterbacks go in college football, and I think you'll see a lot of first time scenarios as college football evolves. But like, you had a guy that you brought in really late that was like a emergency in case of need backup that you were going to redshirt if you could, and we're talking about Ashton Daniels, and then your starting quarterback was so bad you had to make a move. But then you can't play the guy that's the emergency backup enough games that you burn his red shirt because you want to bring him back next year. It's wild. So you had to have that whole situation with Mercer, which I wasn't necessarily crazy about. I don't like the idea of my starting quarterback taking 3 weeks off, especially after you build some momentum on offense against Vanderbilt. But I think what you're going to see on Saturday is Ashton Daniels, and you're going to see a lot of him. I think you'll only see Ashton Daniels, barring an injury or, like you said, if there's some sort of, you got to have a spark and it's not working, you want to go to Deuce Knight. I love what I saw out of Deuce Knight on Saturday. Legs were probably a little bit better than I expected. His arm was good, made a lot of good decisions, 15 of 20 in passing, which is, really impressive for your first real start. But I still think he's the future. I don't think he's the right now. I think your best chance to win Saturday is Ashton Daniels and all of Ashton Daniels. I don't think you see Jackson Arnold unless they threw a little wrinkle out there against Mercer that I hadn't seen yet, and it's sort of like a goal line short yardage situation where Jackson is the quarterback. It's basically a wildcat with a couple of passing options off of it. Maybe you see something like that, but my thinking is Ashton's bigger and faster, and you don't have to have as much substitution. Why would you do that? So I'm not a fan of packages. I don't like quarterback packages. I don't like wildcat packages. I don't like any of it. So hopefully all you see is Ashton Daniels, and that's what I expect to see on Saturday, is just a heavy dose of Ashton Daniels all day long. Talking about quarterbacks, I personally think this is the best quarterback that's Auburn has faced all year. I love Ty Simpson's game. I never thought he was the issue against Florida State, and that proved to be correct. He became one of the favorites in the Heisman race. I don't know if the last 2 weeks or whatever have put a dent in that or where that would stand. He could have a big moment on Saturday and play for the SEC championship and be right back in it. But with all that said, last 2 games have been a little bit uncharacteristic with turnovers. So you had a couple turnovers against Oklahoma that, really impacted the outcome of that game. And then, understand it's a nobody opponent, and it's hard to get up for those type of games, especially when you got the Iron Bowl, but you have 2 interceptions against, was it Eastern Illinois, I believe. How do you feel about his play right now and going into the Iron Bowl, and maybe some context around those turnovers that maybe they weren't all his fault, they were a tip pass or something like that? How do you feel about Ty Simpson as he's heading into Saturday?
Well, anytime over your last 6 quarters of football, you've turned it over 4 times, that's never good.
No.
So, that is certainly, it's worth talking about. And anybody that brings up the turnovers, it's fair. What I will say is, obviously one of those interceptions was a vertical shot downfield right before the half, where, it's kind of a long throw it up there. Yeah. And the coaching staff has actually bragged on Ty Simpson for being willing to do that. He didn't take the easy check down that could have picked up 20, 30 yards. Wouldn't have put them, the half would have run out, but he would have added, numbers, stats to his bottom line, and he wouldn't have thrown that interception. He was willing to chunk it downfield and see what they could get done. And obviously, the defensive back made a good play. Props to him. So you can't put that on him. That's just situational football. But the other one, whole player, I think, got him. You didn't see him, or he was a little bit deeper than he was expecting. And that's something that, when I first watched it, one of the first things I noticed is he probably could have put a little bit more loft on it and really layered that throw. He's been layering throws all year.
Yes.
So he's certainly capable, but just probably didn't put enough quite on that one. But he has been over the middle of the field. He's been a little bit off, some errant throws. I mean, it hadn't looked to the same degree that it did earlier in the season. So that has been somewhat of a concern. But I've told people all week, I don't feel like it's a Ty Simpson problem necessarily. I think that they started off this year where you could, like Kirby Smart, when Georgia was getting ready to play Alabama, this is the example that I've used. Jam Miller was coming back. And so Kirby's looking at Alabama's offense saying, hey, I think they're probably going to be able to run the football more effectively than they have up to this point, because the guy they were expecting to be their workhorse is now going to be coming back from injury. But not only that, the passing game has been really effective. They hadn't really needed to show a vertical passing game. But you wouldn't assume, especially in a Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb offense, that they wouldn't have a vertical passing game. Right. So you're thinking, okay, they haven't had to use it at this point, but they're capable. So the entire idea of covering Alabama's offense, I mean, you thought you had to pretty much cover everything. Well, since then, as the season has progressed, and that's when Ty was at his best, by the way, goes into Athens, plays a great football game, helps Alabama win. But each and every week since then, well, I guess the next couple of weeks, Alabama's run game was really effective until Jam Miller suffered their concussion against Missouri. He was doing great things, averaging over 100 yards per game, and was definitely the presence they were hoping he would be. He has not been the same player since he got back. So over the course of the next several games, it's felt like the defenses have started to figure out, okay, they don't have a consistent run game. They've put on tape that they've tried to get the vertical passing game going, and they haven't been able to do it. And so they've been able to hone in on Ty Simpson in that really intermediate passing game, but also short passing game. And when you're limited offensively and opposing defenses can kind of hone in on specific, just one or two things, they're going to cause you issues. And so I think it's just become progressively more and more difficult for Ty to continue to play at the level that he played at earlier in the season. But not only that, I mean, you've been going against some really good defenses all year.
Sure.
So like that certainly plays a part as well. As far as the performance against Eastern Illinois, everybody's going to look at the 2 interceptions. I didn't think he played bad, to be honest with you. Yes, you don't want to see that. Yes, given the opponent, that looks really bad. But they went into that football game pretty much saying this is a practice. I mean, this is a practice squad caliber team across from us. And I'm not trying to disrespect Eastern Illinois at all. I'm telling you what I think they thought. And because it was pretty evident, like they weren't interested, and it wasn't a confidence building performance for the offense. We all thought going in, as we were talking about the game, this is a great opportunity to get Ty Simpson on track, let him chunk the football down the field, and really try to get his confidence back up. I don't think they're worried about his confidence like fans are, because they go into that game, they run the football 50 times. Eastern Illinois runs it. I mean, between them, I think it was 66.6% of the plays in that game were run plays between the two teams. So they were interested in shortening the game and getting out of there as quickly as possible. Alabama, I think, was like, we haven't run the football well. Let's practice running the football. Let's run it 50 times. And so Ty really wasn't given any opportunities. They didn't do anything to really try to pad his stats or make him look good. I think in a lot of ways that was by design. We'll have to wait and see if that ends up paying off against Auburn. If it doesn't, then I guess we can have a different conversation then. But I'm not concerned about Ty Simpson to the extent that some fans are. But I will say everyone needs to acknowledge that he's not playing the same caliber of football he was earlier in the season. I just think there are elements or other things that have played a part in that. So I'm not going to put it all on Ty's shoulders, but he definitely deserves some of the responsibility and definitely needs to get things back on track.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I got one more question for you, because talking about the offense from an outsider's perspective, like, what do you think about the way Alabama's offense has looked over the last 4 or 5 games? Because I kind of, I guess, jumped the gun there and kind of told you about a lot of what's been going on. But just from your perspective, like right now, I don't know if you look at a college football playoff contender that has a limitation as far as an element of their team that is more crippling in a lot of ways than Alabama's run game. I think we can all acknowledge that it has been really bad. But just from your perspective, what do you think about Alabama's offense and kind of how it's looked?
Is it bad though? I mean, I actually was looking into this the other day, and that's what everyone wants to gravitate to is Alabama can't run the ball. Alabama can't run the ball. But I looked at it, and I think 1 out of every 4 passes almost goes to a running back or a tight end. And then how many of those passes also go to, a wide receiver on like a screen type play or something to kind of get them the ball in motion to where they can go get those 3 or 4 yards. So it feels like Alabama's figured out ways to like extend their running game into the passing game to where those are very high percentage passes that they can get their guys, their playmakers in space. And when I look at that, I look at ways to solve a problem. I'm like, they've figured out ways to solve a problem. Auburn has sometimes, I feel like at times, lost some of those plays out of the backfield. Like you can hit them with a running back pass out of the backfield or a tight end, whether it be over the middle or in the flat. A lot of team speed at Auburn, but they're always keyed in on stopping the run. So whereas people are saying Alabama can't run the ball and Auburn's good at stopping the run, that's a good mix. I'm looking at it like I think they're okay with not running the ball. Like they have the playmakers to be able to do that. And where Auburn has been vulnerable is in the secondary. So if they can't figure out a way to pick up those easy yardage, those easy chunk yardage, passes and things like that Alabama takes that's again an extension of their run game. If you can't pick those up and stop those, that's part of stopping the run. I feel like with Alabama, they're going to be able to keep Auburn off balance, and I think they could find themselves in a bind. So I look at it like they've figured out they have a problem, but they've also figured out a solution to that problem. So how that works on Saturday, I'm sure that's going to be a focal point. DJ actually mentioned most everything I just said in the Monday press conference. So again, I don't think you necessarily – I don't think this has to be like a Nick Saban style offense where they run the ball 35 times and play action. They figure out how to get those 3 to 4 yards and demoralize you and move the chains on third and manageable better than most. So I haven't looked at it as a negative like a lot of folks have. So let's wrap this thing up, man. Just talk about predictions. How do you feel this game's going to play out? You can pick a winner if you want to, but like just overall, how do you see this game going?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is going to be dependent upon, putting your quarterbacks in favorable situations, and that could be through the run game. It could be an extension of your run game with the quick passes that you're talking about, which Alabama certainly, especially at times, has been very effective at. But I think Alabama's pass rush and the way that it's improved based off of what I've seen of Auburn's offensive line feels like it's a more of a run blocking type of offensive line. It's got some bigger bodies, man. I think averaging over 6'5", just under 330 pounds based off of the guys they currently have in their lineup. That's a big group. I think they got some physical players, but I think there are some limitations as far as pass protection, and you can get some breakdowns there. And so if Alabama can put those quarterbacks because of the mobility, and I say quarterbacks, most of this week I've been talking about Deuce Knight having an opportunity, but the mobility factor with Ashton Daniels, if you put him in 3rd and 5s and 3rd and 4s, his legs could end up being what saves drives and extends drives and do all that. If you put him in the 3rd and 9s, 3rd and 10s, that becomes a little bit more difficult, and Alabama's pass rush can maybe tee off a little bit more. I think they can get some wins there. On the flip side, Alabama, really, in my opinion, what has made Ty Simpson a little bit less effective is the fact that you haven't been getting yourself in as favorable situations on 2nd and 3rd downs as much, where play action and things like that haven't been as effective. And Ty Simpson, he's got the ability to turn his back to the defense, flip around, and immediately understand what the defense is giving him and where he wants to go with the football. Makes, those types of players can be extremely dangerous, but they have to respect the play action in order to put those guys in a position to be successful. So Alabama needs to have those favorable situations for Ty Simpson. Whatever offense can do that the best, I think will certainly have a good chance of winning the football game. And whichever defense can limit the opposing team's ability to do that, I certainly think that that's going to impact things as well. I also hope this doesn't come down to kicking. I know Auburn's kickers dealt with some health issues, and you definitely want to pull for that guy, regardless of which side you're on. He's overcoming a lot of adversity. Alabama's kicker is struggling for different reasons. So hopefully it doesn't come down to a kicking game. But I do think ultimately, with the way that Alabama, I think they're honed in on this game. I really do. I think they got a lot of respect for Auburn. It's going to be a really tough environment. I'm sure that's going to impact things as far as communication. Ultimately, I'll go ahead and tell you, I do think Alabama figures out a way to get it done. But I don't think there's too many people out there right now, realistic people, that think that, this is going to be some sort of blowout. It's going to be a war pretty much from start to finish, and you would expect nothing less in this type of rivalry game.
I could be way wrong on this, Clint, but for whatever reason, I feel like it's a race to 30, and whoever gets there first wins. I do think both defenses are very talented, but something about this game, man, it just seems like it's going to be not necessarily a shootout, but a 32-28, 33-30 type of ball game, and whoever can get to 30 first wins. I don't see this one being a real low scoring game. I think both teams are going to be coming in trying to hit some haymakers. So it'll be interesting to see, my man. Look, if you want to hate watch Auburn, you need to check out our YouTube page, The Barn Auburn, on YouTube, if you're watching this on Cover Crimson. And if you're watching this on the Barn Auburn YouTube and you want to go hate watch Alabama, you need to check out Cover Crimson and everything Clint Lamb's doing. We're kind of in this same boat together, and it's kind of, we should be doing this all the time, man. We should be.
We should.
We need to start doing this a whole lot more for sure. So, guys, happy Thanksgiving. Everybody be safe this weekend, and hopefully we'll have a good game on Saturday, no matter what. And appreciate you guys listening. We'll catch you soon.